Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, my dear brothers, sisters, viewers, friends of Ikra TV. Welcome to another edition of Real Talk. I'm your host Iqbal Bana. Today I want to talk to you about something that all of us have been watching and witnessing, very sadly in most cases, of the events that are taking place in Gaza and in Palestine. We've all witnessed some of the tragedies that are happening over there. Some of the very challenging situation within which people in Gaza are living, and the politics behind it as well, the politics of our country, the foreign policy, the statements which have been made both by the Labour Party and the Conservative Party. We have seen people in those parties resign on principle, and I say to those people, well done. There are others who are still contemplating their position. We have seen the Labour Party leader come out and say, Israel has the right to probably, go into Gaza. He did say that before, and to root out Hamas. Now, let me make this absolutely clear. This channel does not condone, does not support any activity or any action taken by anybody where innocent people, particularly women and children and elderly, are killed and murdered and butchered. So in that basis, we condemn Hamas for what they did. But then you look at the context of the situation that this tragedy has unfolded. And many eminent commentators have commented on this fact. If you watch the Western press, the Western media, you see that it's all one-sided. What they tend to forget is that there's 75 years of hurt, 75 years of oppression that has been taking place. And they seem to forget that very eminently and very easily. What I want to do is say, I don't justify what happened 2 weeks ago on a Saturday, because Islam is absolutely clear that even in war, the innocent people should be protected at all cost. Even after victory, when the enemy has given up and said, no, we put our hands up, that you should give mercy and look upon those who have lost with mercy as well. And therefore we condemn what took place a few weeks ago. But what has then happened afterwards, and how the West, and particularly Western governments, have reacted to Israel, and how the support that they've given them, unequivocal support to say we are 120% behind you, and Israel has the right to go in and virtually obliterate the people in Gaza. Now, we have seen this every week, every day, on our screens. The whole of the north of Gaza is virtually been flattened. Hospitals have been attacked. And the worst thing is that on social media, we're seeing so many misinformation that's coming through. The babies will be butchered, etc., etc. That's all been proved to be myths and not real. Some, unfortunately, is real, and some we have to accept and acknowledge are atrocities that should not have been committed. Today, I have two eminent guests with me, one in the studio, who all of you know extremely well, much better than you know me, and that is Maulana Hayat Khan Sahib, who has come back from Pakistan recently, whom I have asked to come to share with us his knowledge, his thoughts, how should we as the Muslim community respond and react to what is unfolding before our eyes. We've seen thousands of people march. In fact, at the beginning on Saturday, the figure that was putting was 70,000. That went up to 100,000. And those who were there are saying that it was much higher than that. 100,000 is a conservative estimate that they put in, but they reckon there were probably over 200,000 people were there, and that is with eyewitnesses from many people. As I say, we've had eminent people talking about the situation in Gaza, putting it into context. We'll be showing and sharing some videos about some of the people who made comments about that, much more balanced comments, including members of the Jewish community who profess to be Jews, who claim to be Jews, who are Jews, who are in total disagreement with what Israel is proposing to do. We have seen a humanitarian crisis developing in Gaza over the last 2 weeks, and eminent doctors, professors, scholars, etc., from both sides have condemned the proposed running of tanks into Gaza to obliterate the population. And I also have on my guest, but not in my studio at the moment, is Maqsood Ahmed. Again, he's not a stranger to this channel, not a stranger to my program. Maqsood was the head of Equality and Diversity in the Home Office, advisor to the Home Secretary for many years, and has been a political activist and a commentator on politics in this country for many, many years. So can I also welcome Maqsood Ahmed. Maqsood, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Can I also welcome Maulana Sahib. Jazakallah for coming, give your valuable time.
Jazakallah.
These are very challenging times for us. So we've got the political side of it that I think Maqsood will be able to assist and help us with. And we've got the religious side that Maulana Sahib will be able to help with and give us some guidance on. So can I start with Maulana Sahib? Maulana, as I say, is a regular presenter on this program, and his program is followed and watched by all the viewers of Iqra TV. Assalamu alaikum, Hazrat.
Walaikum
What are
assalam
your
wa
initial
rahmatullah.
thoughts? What did you feel when you first heard what had happened?
Well, it's tragedy, Iqbal Bhai. It's tragedy all the time. And what I felt when I first heard, I thought, Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi rajiun. See, the people of Palestine, bijare, you know, for so many years, decades upon decades, it's an occupied state. Something which, you know, many of the press seem to have selective amnesia regarding. Palestine is an occupied state, and the current, you know, children who have grown up now, teenagers, they've known nothing else. It's an occupied state. So we've grown up ourselves seeing them being obliterated every year, maybe every 3-4 years. We know they're occupied the biggest
the voice is not very clear at all
in the world. 2.2 million people in an area 1/4 of London. You know, selective healthcare, people who are forced to compromise on their beliefs when their children fall ill, etc., etc. So when I first heard of this, I thought, you know what, these people who are occupied, they've exercised their right to, you know, to do what is their legal right to, you know, to, how shall I?
So freedom.
To exercise their freedom. But in return, I could see even then that there'd be a tremendous retaliation just because of the social and the media kind of the way they kind of came out with it. That you know. This is, and rightfully so, and you rightfully condemned it, and we all condemn this. But then the reaction is absolutely horrific. We see on our TV screen small children being obliterated. You know, one person, bichara, he had a bag, and in the bag he had the remains of a small child. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi rajiun. So my first reaction was that may Allah help humanity, and may Allah help our brothers and sisters in this occupied land.
Maqsood, can I come to you? I mean, obviously, you have been at the forefront of politics and been a community activist, and we've fought against injustice all over, not just in this country, but around the world as well. I mean, obviously, when I first saw, you know, heard that the Hamas had gone into occupied Israel and taken some hostages and obviously killed some people, I felt really sad for the people of Israel. But what were your thoughts? I mean, obviously, you know, we know the context as we put it before. You know, these were freedom fighters that they claim to be, that they want to claim their land back. But the initial reaction, what was your initial reaction when you heard this?
Iqbal, thank you for inviting me. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you for inviting me on the show again. My reaction was of sadness. And the reason it was sadness is because this is being a conflict going on for 75 years. It's not a new one. Are you with me from that side? And innocent lives on both sides have been, obviously, you know, it's a tragedy with women and children and the innocent that have been lost their lives over these years. So it's not a new thing. The most disappointment for me has been is that the European and the West, especially led by the USA, the United States, have remained silent and been one-sided towards not resolving this issue for the 75 years, Iqbal Bhai. That's been and it's going to go on. The world has to come together, and they have to once and for all come to a peaceful conclusion where both sides can live in peace. Otherwise, I'm afraid this is not going to be the end of it. There will be more lives lost. And it's a tragedy what's happening now. In one sense, the constant bombing that's been going on for nearly 2 weeks, or 3 weeks, should I say.
Yeah. I mean, Israel first asked the Palestinian people from North Gaza to move south, and then they started bombing the south as well. So where, you know, what chances those poor people have, you know, in escaping the bombs? And now there's a suggestion that they bombed Khan Yunis, the hospital in Khan Yunis as well, which is in the south. But I mean, in terms of coming back to politics, the USA and Britain immediately jumped, to say we are with Israel, okay? And
And they always have been, Iqbal Bhai. It's nothing new. This is
yes,
something that we know very well. That's one of the problems I feel that the most powerful nation on earth, which is the United States of America at the moment, is more powerful because it has the military power. It's more powerful because it has the political power, financial power, and it has the communication power, the communication to get the message out the way they see it. So when you're supported by the most powerful nation on earth, it's going to be either the nation on earth, the powerful one, becomes a neutral arbiter, a fair and a just sort of arbiter, or it takes side. And sadly, the USA have been taking sides and supporting the occupation, which is sad. And that's the situation we got into. There isn't a counterbalance. There isn't anybody powerful enough to actually support the Palestinians. And I think that's been the issue, where it's a one-sided story of one-sided occupation and torment for those people who've been living their lives for 75 years.
This morning I saw a video where, for the last few years, we've been saying Gaza is a prison camp.
Yeah.
Well, somebody actually sent a video, and I saw that, and he said we should stop saying it's a prison camp. In fact, it is a concentration camp, right? Because, in a prison, people get access to 3 meals a day, health care is taken care of, we get visitors, etc. But this has become a concentration camp. So this language is also very important, isn't it? But I mean, coming back, do you feel that there's a huge anger, not just in this country within the Muslim community, but across the world? Is that mainly because of the duplicity of people like the US and the British government and the response of the British government to the attack, by Hamas? But yet in the past they have failed to do anything when Israel settlers have walked into people's houses and thrown them out in houses that they've been living in there for hundreds of years. Do you feel that that is one of the main backgrounds behind the anger?
I think the anger has been is people like myself, an average person who don't want any sort of harm to the Jewish community here around the world. I will stand by the Jewish community, always have done, always will do. But I think there's about injustice that's occurring to the Palestinians for the 75 years. The anger is building up because people now start to realize when they read more and more the history of Palestine and Israel. And I think that's the anger targeting people who are blocking even humanitarian aid. For example, US vetoed the decision a few days ago not to allow the humanitarian aid to go into Gaza. How can any nation actually stop humanitarian aid going in, food, shelter, water, medicine? It's unbelievable, supported by the United Kingdom and other European allies. Unbelievable decision. And the veto system at Kabal Bhai, I've always said it, as long as nations have a veto system, the most powerful ones, people feel they will not get justice. They will not get justice for nations who are under siege and under occupation. And I think the whole United Nations Security Council, the system itself needs to be looked at, which is a wider debate. But for now, I think the anger is because there is injustice taking place. And that anger isn't against the Jewish community. I am a Muslim. I'm not a Palestinian, Iqbal Bhai. I have no animosity against the Jewish community. I don't hate the Jewish community, in a sense, and I will defend them if anybody's abusing them or physically attacking them. I'll be the first one in Greater Manchester standing up for the Jewish community. But this injustice that's occurring is what making people angry around the world. The population around the world are very angry. Sadly, the politicians in the West do not represent the feelings of even the Europeans and the people living in the West, in my opinion.
I'll come back to that because I think this issue about our local politicians is a very important one. I'll come back to that. Maulana Sahib, obviously you're a very well known, very highly respected scholar. And let me reiterate what Maqsood has said. And this channel's very official position as far as I'm concerned, that we are in support of Jewish people who want to live in peace. It's the Zionists who are threatening the well-being of the Palestinians who've been there for all these centuries, are the ones that we feel are being unjust and unfair. So let's make that absolutely clear. Maulana Sahib, as a scholar, as an imam, I mean, you probably meet a lot of young people, Muslims, who are very, very angry at this moment in time. We've seen the nearly 300,000 people march in London on Saturday.
Yeah, they mentioned 200,000.
There's another one as well. When they come to you, what do you say to them? What do you tell them? What advice do you give them?
Well, I've made a list of 15 points here, Iqbal.
Subhanallah.
15 points here. I want to get through all 15, inshallah.
Inshallah.
But first of all, like our brother mentioned, it's nothing new, you see. But what is new is, as Bhai mentioned here, that people didn't even know the significance of Masjid al-Aqsa. Yeah, and all this current political issue is around Masjid al-Aqsa. In fact, if you look at the name, the government of Palestine, they called it the Aqsa flood. So it's directly a religious conflict, with obviously with political issues over land. But these guys who come the first, I mean, when I do the bayans normally, otherwise we run the clinic and we don't discuss things. Between friends we do. But there's 15 points. The first thing I say to them is, don't lose hope. Because khatra ye hota hai ki aadmi ka iman na chala jaye. Where is Allah? The Muslims are suffering so much. Yeah, so the first thing I say to them is, don't lose hope. Why? Because this is nothing new. This has happened from the year 492 Hijrah, when the Crusades started, and even when the British Mandate, 15th of May 1948, when they gave somebody else's land to people. Us waqt se ye khasara hai. So I say, don't lose hope. Masjid al-Aqsa has been out of the hands of Muslims for 88 years before. So the first message I say to them is, don't lose hope, number one. And number two, I say to them, is that understand the religious significance of Masjid al-Aqsa. It's such an important place, the third Qibla. I say to them that, do you know that Rasulullah faced the Masjid al-Aqsa for 14 and a half years? 8 years to Masjid al-Haram, so in the 13 years in Makkah al-Mukarramah, Bayt al-Maqdis, 1.5 years, 16, 17 months, according to these Muslim, Masjid al-Aqsa. So it's an important place.
It was the first Qibla, yeah.
First Qibla. Yes. So learn about the history of Masjid al-Aqsa. Not for many reasons, dispel the propaganda, any myths regarding it. So दूसरी बात ये, और तीसरी बात, I'll finish, is every time you do dua, there has to be a hissa in your dua. Oh Allah, forgive me, forgive my parents. वो standard होती है ना, या Allah, हरमैन शरीफैन और अर्द मुक़द्दसा का ख्याल फरमाइए. For a select, my son was saying, Dad, I've been doing dua on the way here. You met Hamid. That I've been doing dua for Masjid al-Aqsa all these 3 weeks. So have a portion in your dua for Masjid al-Aqsa and other things as well. Iqbal bhai.
I mean, obviously, I get lots of WhatsApp messages, ye dua paro. We're doing 1 million khatams, this and that. All that is, subhanAllah, very good. And I think we do need to, as Maulana said, continuously make dua for our people, brothers and sisters in Palestine, Masjid al-Aqsa itself, but the people themselves. But obviously, at the moment, the world is run by politics, as Maqsood said.
Of course.
Now, in terms of politics, Maqsood, we've seen many councillors in the Labour Party and the Conservative Party, especially Keir Starmer, made those statements at the very, very beginning of the conflict, which has upset many, many Muslims, in this country. And several councillors have resigned.
At least a dozen.
We've seen what has happened in Oxford, that a block of Muslim councillors resigned. As a consequence of that, the Labour Party has lost control of the council. Now we have that video for that, so we'll show you the video. So let's go to the video and show our sister from Oxford Council, please.
At least a dozen Labour councillors have quit the party over Keir Starmer's remarks on the Israel-Hamas conflict.
A siege is appropriate? Cutting off power, cutting off water?
Well, I think that Israel does have that right. It is an ongoing situation. Obviously, everything should be done within international law.
In Oxford, 8 councillors resigned, which meant Labour lost control of the council.
Here's what one of them had to say.
What I expect from a future leader of this country and from the current Prime Minister and the government is for them to evoke humanity, to call on Israel to not use lethal and disproportionate force inside Gaza, which is against international law, and to call for an immediate ceasefire. None of these things have happened until very recently, and that is not acceptable, and that is why we resigned.
Labour have refined their position since that radio interview.
I was not saying that Israel had the right to cut off water, food, fuel or medicines.
And yet people came to that conclusion.
On the contrary, for over a week now, I have been leading the charge, calling for that humanitarian aid to come in.
But for some, these remarks are too little, too late. This matters for Labour because Muslims are the majority in more than 30 constituencies. If they turn away from Labour, it could cost the party seats in the next election. At least a dozen Labour councillors have quit the party over
I think Mr. Keir Starmer has changed his tune from his immediate reaction when the Hamas attack took place to when Israel responded to it and said, we're going to go in hard and fast and we're going to make sure that every Hamas fighter is going to be killed. I think they have realized that the consequence of that within the Muslim community, the anger in the Muslim community is so high that it's going to have a dramatic effect on the Labour Party at the next general election. And therefore, I think he's retreated, is now going backwards in the statement he's made. But as the reporter said, I think the damage has been done. Several local councillors, Labour councillors, have resigned, and many are contemplating resigning. And I say to the people of Oxford, particularly the Muslim Council of Oxford, well done. You have shown the light. And I've been saying this to my local councillors as well, that they need to really dig deep into their conscience and look where they stand as well. Maqsood, you're a politician, you've been working in politics for a long time. What do you say? Do you agree or do you disagree with that?
I think it's been very disappointing, if I may say the least, on the Conservative Party, the Prime Ministers, and the Labour Party leader as well, Keir Starmer. I think they were shocking statements, and I think I can only speak for Greater Manchester, and in a sense, with regards to the politics of Greater Manchester, I think the Muslim Council themselves also have gone in hiding, most of them. They're not coming out at all. If you see the marches on Palestine, hardly a Muslim councillor has come and attended that. And I think there have been instructions given by the leadership of the political parties not to attend any Palestine gathering, which to me is a shame. I think they will pay a price. I can't speak for anybody else, but I speak for myself. I certainly will not be voting for Conservatives or the Labour Party. I didn't expect much from the Conservative Party, to be honest with you, because they got track record of not tackling Islamophobia within the party. As you know, we've discussed this before as well. But I was surprised and taken back by the Labour Party because, as you know, most of the Muslim community have always supported Labour in a sense in the past. But I think now the generation of my generation, my sons and daughters' generation, are questioning that loyalty and what have we received back from that loyalty. And I think this has been a benchmark. This has been a line that's been crossed with regards to the injustices that's taking place. And I personally think Labour will pay a heavy price for this unjust sort of statements that have been made by the leader of the Labour Party. And I'm so pleased in one sense that the Muslim community is waking up to this fact that their votes have been taken for granted in a number of areas. So I think the Labour Party personally will struggle if they do get into positions of power with the statements that they made, Iqbal Bhai. That's even more dangerous for the Muslim community, the British Muslims, because that's a signal to say to people, no matter what we do with the Palestinian issue and the injustice that's taking place, or not even tackling Islamophobia in the United Kingdom, we're still going to win. And that will put the Muslim community into even worse condition than what they are in now. I believe we've become second-class citizens already, and then we will become the third-class citizens.
I'll come back to you on that because I think that's a very important point. I mean, when you were here last time, I mean, I've been saying this for the last 20 years on TV, that the Muslim community needs to realize that we have so much voting power. We can decide who goes into parliament. If you look at Bradford, if it wasn't for the Pakistani community in the three constituencies, it's the Pakistani Muslim community that votes. It's those votes, including Batley where I live as well, it's those votes that actually elects the person that gets into parliament. And that is replicated throughout the country. Maulana, I mean, a very difficult question maybe for the politicians, but as a Muslim scholar and a respected one, if you stay silent when you see atrocities like this happening, and you're a politician with a party where your party is actually conspiring with those who are committing the atrocities, Where do you stand as a Muslim then, Islamically?
A very good question.
Yeah.
Excellent question. You know, the bench line is very straightforward. The hadith Sharif tells us, "Man ra'a minkum munkaran falyughayyirhu biyadihi." Whoever sees an evil act, then he should change it with his hands. Yeah. فَلَمْ يَسْتَطِعْ فَبِلِسَانِهِ. If he can't do so, then his tongue should be utilized in bringing awareness to this and trying to change the paradigm. فَلَمْ يَسْتَطِعْ فَبِقَلْبِهِ. And if he can't do that as well, his hands can't be utilized, his tongue for whatever reason is tied, then at the least, and this is the least thing, after this there's nothing, is his heart should cry
for this.
He should be condemned in his heart. And the main thing with the hadith saying is that he should feel that this is a tyranny and it's an injustice. So these are the levels, like we know we all have basic iman, amantu billahi wa malaikatihi wa kutubihi wa rusulihi wal yawmil akhir wa qadar khairi wa sharri wa ta'ala. I'm not discounting that. But then what is iman? Iman billah, iqrar bil lisan. First of all, you believe, tasdeeq bil qalb, you say with your tongue, you believe in your heart, and then a'mal bil janan. Your actions say, like Balbai is a believer. Yeah? XYZ. Now, if you don't do this, then your iman is in jeopardy. And the thing, as I was saying to the patient just today, that if you don't speak up and you don't become an activist to whatever degree you can, the danger is this, that your iman has gone from your your ruh and your heart, and you don't even know that you've just been, you've had a daylight robbery committed on you. So our politician brothers and sisters should understand that, is this more life valuable or is it eternity? Is this more, and even, we've had the likes of, I mean, for whatever you think of them, the George Galloways and Michael Michael Bennett, who's passed away. Or bhi hain, our brothers from the Jewish community, looking at the clip of the deceased recently, some of the Kaufman. People who speak the truth are held in high esteem.
We wanted to show Gerald Kaufman's speech.
Yeah, Gerald Kaufman.
But unfortunately, the picture's so grainy that we can't. I mean, he really actually puts the whole story in perspective. And he calls the Israeli state an apartheid state. In Parliament, he called them. Now, we've been told that if you call Israel an apartheid state, you could be prosecuted. So, we've traveled so far to the right that, we're not even able to use that term anymore. But everybody else recognizes it's an apartheid state. Sorry, coming back to you.
I mean, I don't know the legal, the framework, but can you not call Israel apartheid state when Amnesty International has called it?
Everybody
BT Selam has called it. Now you see, Iqbal Bhai, the so-called, I'm sorry to say, this country was a bastion of democracy.
It was.
Yes, it was. And now you see the supine position of our MPs. I remember somebody describing the MPs as a supine bunch. They have no character.
Exactly.
Now, so back to your original question, our so-called councillors, I'd say the same thing. They're pretty much a supine bunch. There's nobody who puts their head above the parapets. Now, if there was no imani jazba, if there was no, an Islamic kind of incentive for you, and the Quran says, "Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu kunu qawwamina bil qist shuhada lillahi wa la ala anfusikum." O believers, stand forth and bring forth your testimony, even if it's against yourself or your loved ones. That's the basic parameters. But many of our councillors, with due respect, Iqbal Bhai, they don't know the basics of Islam. It's not just reading namaz. I mean, it's the fact. It's not just namaz and zakat. It's all the other responsibilities put in you for you to discharge. So our councillors, brothers and sisters, and our MPs, brothers and sisters, should take a firm position. I mean, brother mentioned that Maqsood Bhai mentioned that Carl Steinman said, none of your councillors should go and go to any of these pro-Palestinian protests. Now they should be challenged. Why not? What's the issue? But I don't think, apart from our courageous sisters in Oxford and a few other minorities, people have taken that as a gagging order and they've stayed away. The danger is this, Iqbal Bhai, and finish on this, that if you do, what do they say? If you don't stand for anything, you'll fall for everything.
Exactly.
Masla ye hai na, to iman ka khatra hai.
Yes. I mean, Maqsood, coming back, I've obviously said that, the councillors in Manchester have been silent. I think many councillors around the country have also been silent. But there are some brave enough who've stood up. Even on the Conservative side, one or two councillors have said, I do not agree with the policies of the current government, Rishi Sunak, and therefore I cannot in my conscience stay a member of the Conservative Party. And so I say to them, well done to yourself, and Allah inshallah will reward you both in this world and the hereafter. But coming back to what Maulana said about those who put themselves up into these positions, obviously they are members of a particular party and they have to follow that line of the particular party. But when it comes to Islam, what Maulana says, if I correctly interpret what he says, that these issues should override all things beyond Islamic values and Islamic principles. And if there's a conflict there where your own brothers and sisters, or humanity for that matter, it could be Jews who might be being prosecuted, then or persecuted, that we still have a responsibility to stand up and speak for the Jewish people who are being persecuted as well. So it's not just for Muslims. And if you go back into history, when the Crusaders went from this country to liberate the Holy Land, as they call it, they butchered thousands of people on the way between here and the Holy Land, and in the Holy Land as well, as they call it. Yet when Hazrat Salahuddin, conquered, may Allah be pleased with him,
Ameen,
conquered Jerusalem and Masjid Al-Aqsa, he actually spared all those who surrendered to him, and nobody was harmed. And yet they tend to forget that. Maqsood, coming back to you, I mean, we've seen what's happened in Oxford, where the 8 councillors, Allah bless them, have actually removed the control of that council from the Labour Party, and they become independents now. If that was replicated throughout the country, there'll be probably 30 or 40 councils where those people would actually make the decision as to how that council would be run. Do you think that people, well, obviously they don't have the guts to do it, do you think that people, like-minded people, those who are aware of politics and the political power, if they did that, will we see a change taking place?
Yes, I think there would be. I think there is a consciousness arising within our political leadership, but there's not enough of that consciousness arising, Iqbal Bhai. Mm-hmm. And I think it's not just the responsibility of the Muslim councillors or MPs, if I may add to what the Imam Sahib said. It's to any councillor and any MP, they have to do the right thing. They have to do the justice thing. They have to do the thing that actually, with their principles and the values of humanity that we have, equality, fairness, and justice, that we always aspire to and that we always admired, that people in the West seem to have in comparison to India and Pakistan. But I've been shocked with the caliber of political leadership that we have in the West, in USA, in Britain, in France, in Germany, in Italy, in Spain. If you look at and you hear what they've been saying, they're not talking the language of inclusiveness. They're not talking the language of principle. They're not talking the language of human rights, Iqbal Bhai. That's the shocking thing. I think our political leaders, particularly the powerful ones, are making this world more dangerous. They're not making it more safer. We're becoming more dangerous and divisive than ever before in my whole life. Mm-hmm. But the battle has been on the thinking of ideology at that level. And I always argued in the sense of any nation that's got political power, plus military power, plus the communication power through the mainstream media, you can actually socialize any majority masses thinking of making the perpetrators the victim and the victim the perpetrator. And this is what's happening, in my opinion, my humble opinion, in society. If you take America, America's got all those equations that I've just basically said. It's a political power. It's based on democracy, so they say. They've got the communications narrative to get their message, to get their voices to the rest of the world. There are people in India and Pakistan watching BBC, CNN. There are people in India, there are people in Bangladesh, there are people in the global south that are being fed the same narrative of the perpetrators as there is of the victims. Yeah. So for us, yes, we can say dua, we can do and we should do, but the reality is, if it was just based on the dua, with all due respect, and the Imam will correct me if I'm wrong, the Prophet could have easily said dua and say, Allah, please, we don't want to go and fight physically. Can you save us? And they would have been saved, because the Prophet was the Prophet, the messenger of Allah. But Allah has given us a brain, He's given us physical, He's given us the things that we must do things ourselves as well. We can't just shut the world out and leave it to others to do it. We need to become a powerful people, and politically We need to have decent democracy in everywhere we do. We need to have our own communication channel so our voices can get heard. You know, if you looked at CNN and BBC and Sky News and all the mainstream media, there's one thing in common that they have, Iqbal Bhai. They give the voice of the Israelis on a regular basis, the mothers, the children, everyone, the voices, that the suffering that they've gone through, and rightly so. They should be heard. But if you compare that, the suffering of the Palestinians and the voice of the Palestinians, that's not coming through.
Which is what Maulana started off with by saying this conflict has been going on for 75 years and longer than that. And that's one of the beginning of this program, that we need to put this into context. And this is why, you know, as I said, Gerald Kaufman's speech, if we could have shown it to you. But if we can't, if you go Google it, you know, I'm sure you can easily find it on Google, and you'll be surprised that so many years ago, Gerald Kaufman, and I'm sure Maqsood must have known him because he was a Manchester member of Parliament.
I've heard him, and I've heard him. He was a very credible MP, you know, a very respected
He was very
MP.
highly regarded and respected. But when it come back to, you know, the 75 years of hurt, you know, that the West tends to block out and, you know, not portray on the media, you know, not show the reality of what is going on day to day in the lives of the Palestinian, and they show a one-dimensional picture. I mean, we talk about, Maqsood, you talk about when Maulana said the West is the bastion of democracy, so, you know, so-called democracy.
It was the bastion, you know.
And Hamas won the election, which was considered by the United Nations to be fair, and, you know, fair election. Yet the West have refused to accept that fair election that Hamas won, setting aside, obviously, you know, all the other issues that go along with it. But in terms of the media and politics, Maulana, I mean, and Maqsood, we'll be running out of time. Is this the time? Is this the time now for the Muslim community in this country to really wake up? Forget the fact that we are Deobandis or Barelwis or Ahle Hadith, we are Indians or Pakistani, but we are Muslims with one kalima. To start, I mean, this is happening in Dewsbury, I've been told. Young people are now coming together to form a sort of party type of, not a political party, but a sort of groups of people who are now saying we need to question whether we need to vote Labour and Conservative, as Maqsood said, and look for alternatives who will listen to our concerns, who will address issues about Islamophobia, who will address about, you know, issues about injustice around the world and in this country, and particularly in Palestine. Maulana, is this the time now for us to wake up, particularly after what you said about the current politicians?
It was the time 40, 50 years ago, but it's never too late to wake up, and may Allah Ta'ala help everybody wake up. And the truth is, you know, we're not politicalized by. We are not politicalized people, apart from people like yourself, Maqsood Bhai, and, you know, limited people. We're not politicalized. We are emotional people. We are our own worst enemies. So this political awakening is long due. So it's time, it's high time.
You want to any more main points that you had? Yes.
Well, they're all main, but I'm going to quickly finish these. Fourth point was sharing the virtues of Masjid al-Aqsa, very important with everybody. Maqsood Bhai, you got to bear with me.
I've just come back from there.
MashaAllah. Number 5 is studying the history of Jerusalem and letting from reliable sources to dispel myths. Number 6, understanding the schemes and the plans of the occupiers. Like, you know, like Shaitan's plans, so these guys as well. Number 7, make it a priority cause. Masjid al-Aqsa is priority. Number 8, use all your available resources to further the cause of the Muslims of Al-Aqsa. Number 9, frequently go to Masjid al-Aqsa, read namaz there. Number 10, take care of the maintenance of Masjid al-Aqsa. And number 11, very important, supporting the people living there. There are so many bichari, you know, shuhada who have left orphans and widows. They have needs and they're on the front line. So support them. Number 12, ulama, people like us, a massive responsibility. All through the year. And number 13, taking care of the widows and orphans. I mentioned that. Number 14, supporting Palestinian trade. You know, it hurts, you know, about this so-called burger company, don't mention the name. You know, supporting Muslim Palestinian trade. And number 15, reviving this culture of Palestine, Jerusalem culture. May Allah give us tawfiq.
I mean, Maulana made some very important points, and I know I have said this before, that one tool that really hurts people or the economy of Israel is boycotting Israeli products. I had the fortune of meeting Nelson Mandela on 3 occasions. And if you read Nelson Mandela's book, The Long Walk to Freedom, One of the reasons why South Africa started to change their politics was the boycott that people in this country actually first started. The boycott of South Africa started in this country first and then spread throughout the world. And that boycott affected South Africa in such a way that eventually, after 20 years, they had to make some changes. And that was the reason, one of the main reasons why de Klerk sort of freed Nelson Mandela and started talking to the ANC. And that is something that every Muslim, whoever is watching and those who are not watching, pass this message on. When you go into the supermarkets, make sure that you don't buy any product that comes from Israel or from the occupied territories. I have a tactic that I mentioned this 4 or 5 years ago at a demonstration in Dewsbury. If you go into a supermarket, pick up the product that comes from Israel, go to the till, buy it, then go back and say, I'm sorry, this is a product that I do not want, can I have a refund? That actually has more consequences to the supermarket because they have to do a double transaction and that costs them money. So that's my tactic, so I hope you use it as well. Exactly. And then Maulana said about, frequently visiting them as soon as it's open. I, inshallah, intend to go back. I was there at the end of April. Mashallah. And inshallah I'll go back, Allah willing. Ameen. And the ulama, and this is something that a lot of young people, I don't know, Maqsood, whether you heard this, but by and large, our ulama, just like some of our politicians, have been quiet and they've not been mentioning what is going on. I don't know, what's your experience in Manchester, Maqsood?
Yes, they have been very, very quiet. And I take my hat off to those people who, with principals, who have resigned and will be standing independently. I think that is the way forward for us to do that. Mm-hmm. I would like to say, in addition to what the Imam has said, is that we got to get involved in politics. Are you with me? If we're not going to get involved in politics, then we deserve whatever we get, because it's politics that actually makes the country and the world go around. We have to do that, as well as what the Imam said. I'm not taking that away from them. We have to have channels that expresses our voices. We've got to be standard. And thirdly, we've got to get involved in the mainstream. We got to be on BBC, we got to be on CNN, we got to go on there, putting our view forward and pushing that challenge every time on social media. When I'm doing on social media, I get about 150 people against me coming in from the other side, Iqbal Bhai. Are you with me in a sense?
Yes,
I don't see many Muslims supporting the Palestinian on that issue. What's wrong? And yet, we get 1.6 million hits if a woman is dancing in Pakistan, making rotis and chapatis, but yet we do not respond to any of the tweets which are oppressive, which are barbaric against the injustice that's happening in Palestine. So we've got to change our attitude to take forward on that.
That is very important. But can I just come back to one of the other points Maulana Sahab made? And that is, like Al Khair Foundation, we've been running charity appeals every night. And there are many, many charities are doing that. And whichever charity you want to support, by all means do so. Al Khair is doing it, everybody else is doing it. We know that at the moment aid is not getting through except through a few organizations which are already on the ground. However, we know that these people will really, our brothers and sisters, will need this aid, both medical aid as well as food aid and other aid as well. So whatever you can give, and don't wait till Ramadan.
No.
Don't wait till Ramadan. A lot of people say Ramzan mein hame zyada sawab milega. Am I right, Maulana? Hame zyada sawab milega tab nikalenge hamari zakat wagera. Maulana, quickly, 30 seconds, what would you say to that?
Bilkul Iqbal Bhai, my friends, it's a time of test, tribulations. We're not going to be in the dunya all the time. We're here for a limited time. Allah is watching us and Allah is making the faisli. Allah is Allah. People think Carl Steimer is what? God? I mean, it's in Allah's hands, and we've seen history. You mentioned this Kaufman guy, you mentioned other guys. So really, make your iman strong, and it's not going to happen. You've got to make sacrifices. So please, this is your time to make sacrifices. Make the sacrifices count.
Inshallah, as the Maulana says, be counted. And as I say, Al Khair is making appeals as well, and everybody else is making appeals. You'll see after this program, Al Khair is starting appeals as well. But wherever you are, whichever charity that you feel comfortable with, please make sure you give as much as you can. And make sure, you don't wait till Ramadan. Maqsood, thank you very much for joining me. Thank you very much for your points. And I hope people will follow what he has said. We need to take political control of our communities. We need to have councillors who understand some of our issues and not just be slaves to the political parties and follow blindly their leaders, whatever they may say. And I addressed this to the councillors themselves. Listen to what Maulana said. Ek din tumhe Allah ke samne jana hai, and Allah will ask you the question, where were you when this was happening? And I hope and I pray to Allah that you will have the right answer there. Take care. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you, Maulana Sahab. May Allah be with you.
Amen.